Good morning. Good morning, councillors. Good morning to members of the public, to the media, to officers. Thank you and welcome to the meeting of the 28th of June 2017. Just a reminder to everybody here present, we are live webcasting. So councillors, ladies and gentlemen, please note and please behave accordingly. For voting purposes, councillors, you are reminded to say clearly aye or no when your names are called for any division. Now, apologies. I don't have any apologies, councillors. I've got one announcement.
Morning.
With the leave of the meeting, we'll request to change the order of the items. We're going to change 2.4 adoption of the 2017-18 annual plan with the setting of the rates. 2.2. We're doing that because technically we should do it in that order. Therefore makes sense. With the leave of the meeting, all those in favour? Aye. That's carried. Do we have any conflict of interest declarations? No? Okay, we'll move to the confirmation of minutes. I now would like to recommend that we approve the minutes from the meeting of the 31st of May 2017, having been circulated and taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting. I have a seconder. Councillor Eagle. Okay, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? I declare the recommendation is carried. I'd now like to invite Lance Gunderson to speak on behalf of the Thornton Residents Association. Is Lance here? No? He may well be late, in which case I'll ask Gerard Logan and Martin Shelton to come forward and speak on behalf of the Presbyterian Support Central. Gerard. And Gerard is speaking to the proposed Thornton SHA.
Good morning. Thank you to the Mayor for waiving the notice period for allowing Presbyterian Support to present to this morning's meeting. My name is Gerard Logan. I'm the Property Director of Presbyterian Support. Presbyterian Support provides elderly accommodation, nursing home care with over 150 retirement apartments and 1,000 care beds in the Lower North Island. We have recently initiated some $80 million of redevelopment of existing homes in Berhampore and Tawa. The Berhampore project will provide 70 new care beds and 57 apartments, while the Tawa project, known as Longview, will deliver 43 retirement apartments. I'd like to acknowledge the Strategy Committee for considering the George Street SHA application some three weeks ago on the 8th of June and recommending it for nomination as an SHA site. In response to the RHA, I confirm that we're extended the invitation to meet. The reason I'm here is that we were advised that the Thornton Residents Association were going to speak at this meeting. We had previously met with them on the 30th of May and explained our evolving design brief and concepts with regard for a residential development on the site. For those of you that do not know the site, it's the old Ministry Works Depot. It's an old industrial building that is near the end of its economic life. It does have a number of issues that need to be addressed, including adjoining the seismic rupture zone. It's in a floodplain path and an overland flow path. So the goal with this building is to use the existing podium structure and to maintain the generous below parking. Above the podium, it's intended to provide a mix of 31 new 1, 2 and 3 bedroom duplex apartment. We will, however, work within the existing bulk, mass and height of the existing building structure, and in doing so we will consider contemporary modern design rather than merely replicating existing townhouse designs of the locality. We considered that our meeting with the Thornton Residents Association was a positive and open engagement, so therefore we're somewhat perplexed and in fact disappointed that they had chosen to lobby you today, and we had thought that they were going to speak with you, but I understand they've decided not to attend today. The Thorndon Residents Association's actions have reinforced our concerns that that they will seek to block the development by whatever means unless it meets all the criteria, not only in the district plan but other sideshow issues. Presbyterian supports the Wellington Council's strategy to enable more housing, particularly through the redevelopment and intensification of poorly used inner city land. We had been encouraged to apply for the nomination as a special housing area, and we did this over 6 months ago. The site in George Street has the ability to quickly deliver 30 new housing units on a challenging, underutilised inner city site. The prospect, however, of pursuing a conventional resource consent application, and I'd reiterate with all the sideshows, particularly in regard to the parking issues in the area, has very limited appeal to Presbyterian support. We therefore encourage you as a council to accept the Strategy Committee's recommendation in regard to the SHA. Thank you for your time.
Councillors, I am happy to take questions within time. I have one from Councillor Wolfe.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. I was very close to where I voted. I ended up supporting the SHA there.
Thank you.
But it's a close run thing. I'm just wondering how your engagement is with your neighbours, and also are you looking to keep within the character of the Thorndon area? And I think other councils are thinking very closely about this also, based on the Mary Potter Hospice and the SHA that was set up there, which has alienated a lot of the neighbourhood and the local community, and which possibly doesn't fit the character of the area. So you need to assure us that you're going to work with your community and keep within the character, the spirit of the SHA as well.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Several parts to it. One is the proposal is to work as much as possible within the existing district plan rules, number one. The second one is obviously, as with all of our other projects, we have had a high level of community engagement, and it is our intention to continue that engagement with our immediate neighbours. With our Tawa project, for example, we've ran a number of workshops with the adjoining owners. We did get 12 applications, and in fact we met with them. In fact, I was meeting with a number of them around their homes in the evening, and in fact that now has gone, the resource consent has been granted without the need for a hearing. So that has only come with a high level of community engagement, and we, as I said, we are part of the community, and it's essential that we bring the community with us, because they ultimately, with some of our homes, they might be potential residents. So why would we alienate them?
Yeah, just a character question.
Oh, and character questions, yes, where possible, and we have engaged Ark House to work on that, and again we'll consult with them. And in fact, we did say to the Thorndon Residents Association is that we would engage with them. So that's why I was perplexed that in fact they did a U-turn and then have been quite anti it. But we gave that undertaking to them that we would engage with them through the process, and I thought they were supportive. So,
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Dawson.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for some of those comments there. I have to say that your several references to sideshows doesn't really convince me that you're keen to consult
Councillor
very well.
Dawson.
So can I ask two questions. Can I ask, first of all, you didn't have a SHA for your other projects. Why is it so important for this one? And the other question is, can you give us an idea about whether there's going to be any affordability issues with these places that you want to build in Thorndon?
We haven't, just quite a number of questions there. In regard to the economic viability, we haven't done the detailed analysis of it, but a high level would indicate that just simply the way that building costs, as all of you are aware, are increasing 6 to 8% a year. It's very, very difficult to put in affordable housing into these projects to make the numbers stack up. So that's firstly on the economic one. Your second question in regard to consultation is that we will consult as we go through, and in fact we were meeting with one of the neighbours this morning on that very issue and just explaining the SHA process and the resource consent process.
So my question was, why do you think you need a SHA for this one when you haven't for the previous ones that you've done, which, as you say, are moving ahead successfully?
Well, they are moving ahead successfully, but the time and the costs that are associated with it and bringing professionals along for one of the other ones had major parking issues which were quite unrelated to the project, yet we got caught in the centre of it. So you tend to get caught in the centre of non-related issues, which are community-based issues, and with respect, as sometimes it's, as I say, the parking in some of these areas is what I call a non-related issue because there's adequate parking on site, and we could get well drawn into it and the need to engage expensive professionals which ultimately hold up the process.
Thank you. Can I remind all councillors, we don't debate with public participants, we ask questions of. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. I have two questions. Just want to preface it by saying thank you for all the work you do for the vulnerable and the ill in society. Two questions. Can you just clarify that the new building will be within the dimensions? I think you said that will be in the dimensions of the current building?
Well, that's the very high level preliminary plans we've got is to try to work within that, to keep it within the 10 metre height limit within the zone.
Thank you. And the second question is about one bedroom. It's presumably a scarcity of one bedroom places. So how many one bedroom apartments will you be putting in, please?
We haven't done that level of detail, and again, once we get down to the feasibility study, we'll look at the economics of providing 1 and 2 bedroomed and look at the mix. Also, we need to do some market analysis to actually see where it is. So.
Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you. Two questions from me. The first one of them is just when you talked about going to the character one, when you talked about the design, you said it was not going to be a replication of what's there, but something different. I mean, how different is it like to be? Because character is clearly a major issue in this area.
Well, the intention would be to provide something contemporary. At the moment, we've got a very industrial sawtooth type structure. In fact, anything that moves away from that, I would suspect, will be an enhancement to the character of the area. But
in terms of if you think of Thornton's character and the kind of buildings that are
look,
there,
it certainly will respect that. And like any project, good architecture is always enduring, isn't it?
I hope so. Yeah. Okay. And the second question is just in terms of the process. The last year we had 99.2% of all consents which were applied for were granted on a non-notified basis, and some of the remaining 0.8 would have been limited notified either, which probably would just be the immediate neighbours. I guess my question is, what is your concern? And obviously, the Thornton Residents Association would not necessarily be an immediate neighbour because they don't, it's about individuals. What is your concern about going through that process? Because you've talked about an engagement process with a number of other communities, and you're saying you're going to engage with this community as well. I'm not quite sure what your concern is about going through that process as opposed to the SHA process, which essentially means you don't have to engage. You could choose to, but you don't have to.
I'm not actually sure you're correct. I think it's council officers make that election, and from what I understand, and we have been advised by your officers, is that your immediate neighbours would be the ones that would be you would directly consult with, and you'd want to do that in any event.
Yes.
So it would be immediate neighbours, and that's what I said earlier. You're not going to be caught within the community issues. So you still need to do a level of engagement, but it is somewhat limited.
And the last part of that is in terms of, you said, hiring expensive consultants, etc. I mean, when you do a resource consent application, you will need to have, if parking is an issue in the area, you will need to have the traffic work done, regardless of whether it's a SHA or a consent under the RMA in the normal way, to have
Yes.
some work done anyway to
Yeah,
show
well,
that
that's
there
right.
aren't significant effects.
Yep. Yes, you're correct. But the issues are only the issues that directly relate to the development itself. In a number of our,
Should be.
and I think in a number of our other applications, we've had to address way broader issues, which were community-based issues rather than issues that were specific to the development project in itself.
Thank you.
Councillors, we're out of time, but given the interest, I've got a couple more questions. I'll allow those questions to proceed. If we could just limit them to one question, perhaps. Councillor Young.
The Mary Potter development is one that is haunting this project. It's the spectre behind it. Are you aware that Archives architects were also the architects for the Mary Potter houses?
I am aware of that.
Right, that's my question.
Councillor Calvert.
It's already been answered.
Okay, no more questions? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Gerard, and thank you, Martin, for your attendance as well. Just to check, so Lance isn't here on behalf of Thornham Residents Association? No? Okay, we'll proceed. The council appointments to external committees and forum, report 2.1. I'm happy to introduce. We'll take the report as read. We've got the recommendations to agree to appoint a councillor as an alternate member to the Wellington Water Committee and agree to appoint Councillor David Lee to the Wastewater Treatment Plant and Landfill Joint Committee, and to agree to appoint David Lee and Iona as alternate to the Waste Forum Wellington region. I'm happy to remove those recommendations, and we'll call for an alternate appointment as well for the Wellington Water Committee. I'm happy to move. We have a seconder. Councillor Young. And Councillor Pennant, you wish to speak? Yes.
Thank you. Look, I'm sorry, there's a mistake in this paper. It was actually Councillor Sparrow who's supposed to be appointed to the Joint Landfill Committee. I'm not quite sure how that happened, unless Councillor Sparrow now wants to leave the residents of Tawa to the hands of Councillor Lee. But I would welcome your participation on this, and I hope we can work really together to ultimately turn this into a resource recovery centre rather than a landfill. This is in my target to close this down eventually. So if I can just move that that's Councillor Sparrow instead, and I'd also like to move that Councillor Gilbert is my alternate on the Wellington Water Committee.
Councillor Sparrow, to confirm you're quite happy to be on the joint forum?
Yes, I am. I saw that, I wondered about it, I asked questions elsewhere and thought, well, I wasn't going to die in a ditch about it if it was Councillor Lee, but I am happy, yes.
Okay, and a second of Councillor Gilbert's nomination as well. As the alternate? Yes, Councillor Dawson. Okay, I'll move those recommendations and amended substantive appointing Councillor Gilbert. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? I declare the recommendations carried.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it's Andy. He's quite right. Sorry.
I was wondering what you were appointing
sorry.
another alternate
The alternate it's an alternate for the Wastewater Committee. I'm the representative, and Malcolm will be the alternate. Sorry, it's worded incorrectly. Can that be changed? Sorry, it's just obviously no one.
Councillor Pennant, can you please make clear what you're seeking to do?
So number 3, this is worded incorrectly. It was, in fact, the whole this thing is wrong. So Councillor Sparrow is being put on as the alternate to this committee. I'm already the representative and wish to remain so as number 3 because I'm the waste portfolio leader. So it was just as an alternate and it's missing the words. Sorry.
So to confirm, Councillor Sparrow is the alternate. No, sorry, Councillor Lee is the alternate. Councillor Sparrow Councillor Sparrow is your alternate. I'm now regretting the email where you asked if we could make these changes. Right, we're happy to do that. Councillor Pannett will be confirmed and Councillor Sparrow is the alternate. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? No. Thank you. We're now going to move to report 2.4, the adoption of the 2017-18 annual plan. I will stand for this, it is tradition. Council. Councillors, we're getting there. Our first annual plan, a milestone achievement after being elected in October. It's nice to have gotten this far. But it's more than that. It also establishes our vision for Wellington, our purpose and our actions. I do want to share with you a whakatauki, which goes along the lines of he rangi te matawhaiti, he rangi te matawhanui. The person with a narrow vision sees a narrow horizon. The person with a wide vision sees a wide horizon. So I want us, as a council, to see a wide horizon. I hope everyone in this room understands that, to a significant extent, we hold the future of Wellington in our hands, and that's no small job. Many of our decisions will have a lasting impact beyond the 3 years that we've been elected and for which we'll serve. So what does our horizon look like as a group of councillors? Now, this annual plan is our first step towards that. We want to be the most livable and one of the quirkiest cities and the quirkiest little capital in the world. So we want jobs that pay well and a strong local economy. We want a high-functioning transport system that's balanced with the best public transport in Australasia. We want a variety of housing options that future generations can afford. A resilient city. We want to be well known as New Zealand's capital of culture, and we want to have, most importantly, that Wellingtonians have confidence in the job that we are doing as a council and as an organisation. So what is our purpose? Well, for me, and I hope this resonates with the whole organisation, we are here to serve. We are here to serve. This isn't about privilege. It's not about us as individuals. It's about doing the best job that we can and making the best possible decisions for Wellington. So this time, 12 months ago, 5 of the individuals around this table weren't here. This time, 12 months ago, we had 5 different individuals sitting around the table. This time, 12 years ago, 14 of the councillors weren't here. This time, 12 years ago, 14 different individuals were sitting around the table and one was there with them. This time, 7 years ago, we had a different chief executive and an entirely different executive leadership team. Not a single member of our senior staff was here in this room. And yet the city hasn't stopped, it continues on. These aren't our seats, we occupy them for a period of time for which we're elected and for which it's our job to serve Wellingtonians. I think it's our role to make sure that we leave the city in a better position than when we started in this job. It's not about us and our particular ideas, connivances, or our particular opinions. It's about the city. The great aspect of this annual plan is comes to the third point of what I want to talk about. This is actions. We can talk as much as we want. We can come up with proposals and beautiful pictures and concepts and ideas, but it's getting underway with projects that have a budget and have a firm commitment and an initiative. And I think we've made a really good start. We've made a really good start to the way that we've acted and to the way that we've got on with projects. It's wonderful to see we're commencing with projects like the Town Hall. We've had councillors doing good jobs on projects like Miramar and parking problems around the airport. We've made a wonderful start on some of the transport initiatives, and it was a great pleasure for me, dreamy almost, to cycle in this morning along the new Hut Road, which is quite an enhanced experience. But there are going to be problems. We're just getting underway with Let's Get Wellington Moving, and that's going to be a 50-year decision for transport and connections and how we get around the city. It will not be easy. Of that I have no doubt. It'll be fun, and hopefully we'll make a good decision. But I want just to remind us all, about 9 months in since we were elected, that it's great that we've been able to treat each other with respect, with courtesy and professionalism, and we've shown the city we want to get on with the job. We've garnered the respect, I think, of the public and certainly central government, and long may it continue. I do know that there are 3 of you clamouring to get out of this organisation, and may well do so within 3 months, but you go with our support should that eventuate. And likewise, if that doesn't work out, you'll be welcome back here with open arms. Kia ora. Councillor Eagle, second and to speak.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for that whakatauki, which I think signifies the first 9 months of our tenure here. And what a time it's been. You campaigned on a platform where I think it was there's something for everyone type offering. I was going to call it a buffet, but it would send signals that I'm hungry or something, and that's not true. Or it's food related. But what I do want to say is there is something there for everyone, and what I'm most impressed about is as soon as we started in this triennium, we had a process in place which saw us have a retreat for the first time also in the time that I've been here, which is year 7. We didn't do one in the previous 2 trienniums. We talked about it. We talked about how we should have. The fact is we didn't. In this triennium we did. And what that did is laid the platform which underpinned this work. We got a 3-year work program where we were able to embrace most of what you said for some of us, for others all of what you have campaigned on, and allowed us to put that into a triennium plan, the first that I can recall. When it was being developed, I remember officers who have been here for quite some time saying not in their time had they seen a work program that had been developed by the elected membership and owned by the elected membership. And that's why I think we're here today with what's been a reasonably fuss-free process, because we own it, and having ownership of this city, I assume we're all here because we're here for Wellington and what's best for it. And that's been an easy task to put together. It is going to be the year of action, and look at all the big projects we've got there. There's a lot of infrastructure there with the town hall, civic reaccommodation, I guess you could call it, and also the movie museum. But there's other infrastructure there like housing, and yesterday we got to see just a taste of what we're going to need to address for housing in the city, and that's big. That's going to form a big part of the year of action. There are other big things for me personally, and that's extending the living wage, where for the first time we didn't relitigate it. We accepted that that's what Wellingtonians want. That is a key mechanism that's going to help resolve poverty and address social equity in the city. And we have been able to have that conversation easily and recognise that that's now part of the city fabric and what takes us forward. There's lots of small things in there too. It's easy to talk big, but it's also easy to talk small. And you'll see that the removal of those spectator fees, it's only a small fee, but boy, does it make Wellingtonians upset when they go there to watch their children or do what they do, and they have to pay for that. Just taking that away has made a huge difference, and you'll see the relief on people when they find that, look, it's such a small thing, but also such a big pain. Other small things in that area too, which I guess make a big difference, are things like play areas, and we've committed to a program of works there. They sit in our communities right across the city, but they too make a big difference for families. And of course they're free. So, those are things that have been part of our core infrastructure or core services to the community, and it's pleasing that we've had a real push to see those recognised in the plan. So colleagues, thank you all for contributing from day one, week one really, and putting this together. I might be clamouring out of here, but it may not be quite true. So we'll see what happens on the 23rd. But look, I've certainly been proud to be part of the team that supported the Mayor to help put this together.
Thank you, Councillor Eagle. And just before we go on to the speaking list, I just want to remind councillors, so there are a couple of minor changes to the fees and charges per Baz's email that came out to us yesterday. You've seen the background of that, the New Zealand Fire Service on charge, and Councillor Wolf may choose to speak to the holding the fees of synthetic artificial turfs as well at current levels. If the portfolio holders want to speak to that, please feel free. Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. And as one of the new five, I have to say it has been a reasonably enjoyable experience, and being able...
It's been great.
Thank you for the preface.
Yes, and being able to have a say and be listened to. I do want to congratulate the officers on pulling together this annual plan. They were willing to try some different things with engaging with the public, and I think we got some lessons out of that and some things that worked really well, and we're very much into continuous improvement ongoing, and especially it's going to be important for the long-term plan. Within the annual plan, I stood for council because I wanted to improve community engagement, and I wanted to give a stronger voice back out to our suburban communities. So I'm really pleased to see in our annual plan that we do have a focus on suburban planning and also about place-based planning. So we think about the people, we think about how they move around their place and live and work, and I think that's really important. And as you know, we've got a small amount in the annual plan to help us improve our community engagement, and I'm really pleased to see that. And in fact, that money's been targeted for the Karori framework, which is a master plan about place-based planning. So it's really good to see that we are actually putting things into action pretty much now. And talking about Karori, and I suppose in the annual plan, there's probably one little niggle I do have, and that is our town hall. I absolutely support the town hall, and we're developing a music hub in partnership with Victoria University, and that's good. You know, Victoria University their vision is to become a global civic university, and it's great for us as a city that we can support them, and we can also enhance our standing in the arts and culture. And probably what some of my colleagues on there will talk on. And we're also strengthening St James Theatre. But while we do that, we have to find a place for the Royal New Zealand Ballet. And my immediate thought was Karori campus. It's got a hall, it's got a dance studio, it's got offices, it's got a catering area. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to find a way to utilise that property. So now we are having to put extra money into fire in Hutchinson Road. So that is my only little niggle, but really just to say that I've actually really enjoyed this process, and I'm looking forward to enhancing it in the future. Thank you.
It's Councillor Calvert. Councillor Foster.
Thank you. And look, I want to start by thanking you for your introductory speech, and certainly the thought that you had about, you know, that what we're doing now is we're building on the past, what other councils have done in the past, and we're building a platform for the future, for future councils. And I think we can be very proud of the work that's been done here. It's been a pretty seamless process in terms of this annual plan, and it's been done, as you said, Mr Mayor, it's been done in a very, very collegial fashion. I think that's great. We've had some disagreements on some things, but it's been done in a way which has been really, really good. And I just want to congratulate you in particular for following through on the things that you talked about in the election campaign and delivering those projects. And you see them, several of them, in this annual plan. So I think that's really, really great. I also wanted to reflect on something that's really, really positive. We've also agreed a training plan. So we're not just dealing with this 1 year, which most of the things which are in this one, apart from the town hall, are relatively small. But there are a lot of big things there and a lot of big aspirations which we have in the training plan. I think it's really, really exciting that we're setting out our stall for the next 3 years, and I think that's really great. There will be some very, very hard decisions to make, and I think we should also reflect on, as you said in the introduction, that some of these things will have very long gestations. It will take a while to get through them. So community planning, for example, those things have long planning horizons. Transport, you mentioned, that has a long planning horizon. You don't just go, right, click, we're going to change things. and it's all done. It takes time. Takes time to engage, to plan, and then to do the delivery. And often the delivery is in many stages. Likewise, planning for the growth that we're seeing in the city. I mean, this city is growing very, very fast, and that growth has to be accommodated in some way, and that takes a lot of work and a lot of planning to do that as well. So that's going to be quite a long planning process. Resilience, again, we've been on a 25-year journey as a council in terms of delivering greater resilience, infrastructure, buildings, communities. And that work will continue as well. But the one I wanted to reflect on, particularly in this plan, because it is a particular initiative within the plan, is pest predator free. And that is something which, again, is part of a 25-odd year journey that we've been on to restore as much as we can the natural environment of this place, to protect land. So, for example, we've recently agreed the protection of the forest of Tāne and Tawa. That's another step in that journey. Pest predator free is the next big leap in terms of that journey of ecological restoration. I think it's something which we can be immensely proud of, and it's really great to be putting that stake in the ground and to be able to continue working with our community, because our community is really passionate about this. This will be something which we have not hundreds of people involved in. We've already got thousands of people involved in. But ultimately, as you know, every 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 backyards, plus all the schools, plus you're going to have not quite everybody involved, but you will have tens of thousands of Wellingtonians involved actively in doing something for the restoration of our natural environment. And so I think this is a really great plan. And the other thing I was just going to reflect on finally is just in terms of the long-term plan. This is going to be a much, this is the 10-year plan. We're going to have to get down to a lot more detail. There'll be a lot more work in that. But I'm hoping that we will be able to conduct it in the same kind of fashion that this has been conducted, and that will really set a framework for this city going forward and for future councils beyond that.
Councillor Wolfe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too would like to thank all those involved in putting this all together, particularly Jeremy and his team, Baz, Lloyd and Fiona. You guys have done a tremendous job and gone the extra yards, and particularly after hours. Also our team in the Democratic Services who have supported them absolutely superbly. I would just like to say that there's a few thank yous, and particularly for the engagement side of things. We ran forums, and Your Worship, it was your initiative to do that, and I think that should be commended, because we actually saw and heard quite some number of people that we wouldn't have seen ordinarily. I also want to thank those people that put in written submissions. We had everybody from Corey Ryan, a 9-year-old that wanted a pump track out in Paparangi, to some very big submissions, and particularly in regards to hospitality, craft beer and coffee in particular, arts, culture, pest predator free, the economy, transport and resilience. And what this annual plan showed that few others did was empathy. And again, Your Worship, this is something that you've led and that has come through within this 6 or 7 months, and I'd just like to commend you for your leadership in that, and also the councillors for the goodwill, the good faith and the spirit in how we've carried this out. Finally, we are leading on to a really good LTP next year, and ultimately we have and we'll be talking about this later, a very reasonable rates rise that people should be happy with. So again, thank you to all involved.
Councillor Panna.
Oh, do I have to move that amendment?
It's part of the amended substantive. You're talking about artificial turfs?
So, yeah.
It's already in.
Already in, okay.
Councillor Panna.
Thank you, and I'd like to repeat those thanks of my colleagues to all those who are involved. I know it takes an enormous amount of work to put that much paper together. Look, I agree, Councillor Eagle, the idea of having a training plan was a really good innovation, and I think that will really focus our work over the next 2.5 years. And of course, from my perspective, the heavy emphasis on sustainability and resilience is a very positive step, because some of us, of course, have long argued for that focus. I would say, however, it is still a little bit siloed, and I think when we look at the interconnections between some of those projects, initiatives and policies, that we've got some work to do, because some of these things don't entirely agree. And of course I agree with a focus on housing in this triennium. Everyone needs a place to stand, but I guess where I personally come from is that I would see that our planet is also our home, and that's why it needs the utmost care and protection. And so when I read the Mayor's Forward, that was one part that was missing, that really strong focus on protecting this wonderful city for future generations. I'd like to thank Councillor Calvi-Freeman in particular for working on that LED lights issue. I think while it did come at the expense of safer speeds, that's going to be a really positive thing for the city and will help with our emission targets. No one's mentioned it, of course, but let's just say again, the living wage is a fantastic step forward. No longer will anyone working for us or those some contracting for us will have to live on poverty wages, and that is what a decent employer and a decent governor should do. Te whare oki, thank you, Mayor Lester, for keeping that on the agenda. I had the privilege and the experience, the bitter disappointment of leading that project back in 2009 and getting immersed in politics and then getting undermined, even though there was very strong councillor support for it. The town hall, of course, it's got to be in there, and I look forward to us actually starting work on this project. It will be magnificent. And the swimming pool fees, look, that's just another little step in the journey that we've walked together about making it more accessible for children to swim. And I certainly hope that, and have highlighted to the Mayor, that I would like to see some progress on making it cheaper for children to actually learn to swim, because at the moment the fees are really inaccessible. So I'm, like I said, Mayor Lester, thank you for building the consensus over this budget. The next budget will be more difficult because it's going to have some large items of expenditure, very, very large items. So, of course, we will try and be as efficient as we can, like in the landfill space, on the emission trading scheme liabilities, but there are items of expenditure that we need to put in. So, for example, the Prince of Wales Reservoir, there is a funding gap at the moment, and I very much look forward to your unanimous support for the $13 million that we will need to put into the budget next year, unless, of course, we can source it from elsewhere. But look, this is a really good start to the triennium, and I appreciate and thank all colleagues for the constructive approach that they've taken to it.
No one else wishing to speak? Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, I'll just speak the traditional brief word. When we looked at the long-term plan and last year the annual plan, looking forward, I was really concerned that we had over 5% as a rates increase projected for this year. And I just did not know how we were going to be able to go to the public and explain that that's what we had in mind. And congratulations, Mayor and everybody, for saying, okay, we've got to suck this up, we've got to look for efficiencies, we've got to use technology, all of those things, and to bring it back to where we have it now. And so I think that's a great step. We do need to maintain that going forward in the long-term plan. And I just want to congratulate the Tawa business community, because the one thing that we haven't here, the rates, that their targeted rate, they now have a business improvement district. And I think it's important to recognise that SMEs are the lifeblood of this country and many economies around the world. Without the SMEs and enabling them to operate in a simple, straightforward manner, and perhaps giving them some sort of autonomy to manage themselves as groups so they can do the best thing for their own business community, and getting the bit across the line for Tawa, congratulations to that community, and I look forward to seeing them really flourish.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. There's no need for a right of reply. Thank you, councillors, for your contributions. I'll move the recommendations as amended in accordance with the email from Baz as well. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? I declare the recommendations carried. We'll now move to report 2.3, the appointment to the Wellington Hutt Valley Whaitua Committee. We'll do that next. Appointment to the committee. I'm happy to move the recommendations. I'll take them as read. I understand there's an amendment which has been circulated as well and it's now up on the screens. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Lee? Councillor Pannett, you wish to speak to your amendment? Yes. And then at the end of, once we've moved the recommendations as amended, we will then seek nominations for the appointment.
Thank you, Mayor Lester. And look, I'm sorry that I'm just going to ask if we can just add a few extra words on the advice of Mr Chick, just about that we make this recommendation contingent on the support of other stakeholders on the group. So just after recommends, maybe, Talava, that would be fantastic. Look, I'm very supportive of this whātua being set up. Too long have we treated our waterways as a kind of landfill. It is time to clean it up and show the respect for this most precious resource that we have. So I'm very happy to support Councillor Gilbert as our representative on this group. But what I've just done is just said, look, can we at least consider the use of alternates? The workload on these groups is enormous. It's, meetings every few weeks for 4 hours for 3 days, and for 3 years, sorry. And I just think realistically, if elected members in particular are able to do the job, and including even people from the community, that it does make sense to have some alternates. There's this argument about the need for continuity, but just with proper briefing, I think that can be allowed for. And just the other thing is that, in line with possibly my previous speech, that we do respectfully ask the Whātua Committee to look at the issue of collaboration, because essentially one of the limitations of this process is that it's being put onto one person from each organisation, when from our perspective particularly, there are many people with an interest in this the outcome of this process. So Councillor Foster and myself, of course, have strong responsibilities in this area. So I'd just like to see a bit more of an attempt to really come and work in with other people and make sure that whatever the work of this committee is consistent with all of the other work that we do in water and urban development in particular. I'd also just like to hopefully share a little bit of my experience being here for 10 years, that if you're going to go in for a large process, that you do think immediately about the money. You do not leave it, you don't set out an ambitious gold-plated scheme and then go, oh, but we don't have the money to pay for it. So I hope that right from the beginning that we will look at what is actually affordable over, maybe a 10 to 20 year time frame. So I hope that this recommendation can be accepted. I do have the support of Councillor Kedgley, who's the Chair of the Environment Committee at Greater Wellington, and I know that speaking to officers at Greater Wellington, they are happy to consider it.
You have seconded. Councillor Free, you wish to second? Councillor Foster, wish to second, wish to speak?
Speak to the substantive, so I'll speak to the whole thing. I hope I get this one right. I'm Jill here. Ko te wharangi na maunga, ko whangarau a tara te moana, ko kai wharawhara me karori na awa. And what I've just said there is obviously te wharangi is the ridge that runs essentially along the back of the outer green belt. Whanganui-a-Tara, I think you all know, is our harbour, and that is part of our identity, and that's what this is about. And I've also recognised Kai Wharawhara and Karori, which are the two streams in the area which I've lived for many, many years, as our rivers, streams. And so I think it's really, really great to see this process start. We've been engaged in the Porirua catchment whātua for some years, and there's some really, really big challenges there. But this is the one which is really central to most of us as Wellingtonians. Our harbour, our coasts, our streams, those that we've got. The Hutt River might not be in our jurisdiction, but it's obviously very, very important to many Wellington city residents as well. And I just wanted to echo what Iona has said before, which is water quality and the use of water is an issue nationally. It's clearly a very, very large issue in some parts of the country, possibly less so in Wellington, but certainly, you look at the Hutt River in particular, water quality there is a major issue. You look at some of our streams, they are failing the standards which the Regional Council has suggested they should meet. So there are going to be some challenges here. And there are arguments around the country about, whether it's the rural sector causing the damage or it's the urban sector causing the damage. The reality is we all have a part to play in this. So it's not just going to be councils, it's going to be all stakeholders and all people in our community. So I think this is really fantastic to get on to this piece of work. And I think that if we can see this as a part of I mentioned in the last debate the restoration of our terrestrial ecology that we've been doing over the last 25 odd years, but this is part of the restoration of our aquatic ecology as well, because it's not just the water, it's the things that live in the water, and some very exciting things that we are able to do there. We have, for example, a group that is working now, Zealandia started that, brought people together, but there's a whole lot of community groups and individuals who are working on the Kaiwharawhara catchment to improve that. So that work is going to continue, and that is going to be part of this, undoubtedly feed into this piece of work. So I'm delighted to see that Peter's going to be championing this, but can I just say, and I know the issue that Iona has raised, and thank you for doing that, in terms of alternates, this is going to cross a lot of portfolios. So however we do it in terms of the alternates, I think that it is important that we keep engaging across all of these, whether it's the land use ones, which is, I guess, my issue, or the issues around infrastructure, which is Iona's one, that we're all working together on this, whoever happens to be going to any particular meeting, that we're keeping on engaging and talking about the issues which are coming up and the issues which are to be debated.
Okay, the amendment's been moved and seconded. Anyone speaking to the amendment? No? I'm going to move the amendment. Councillor Free will come to your amendment as part of the substantive. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? I declare the amendment carried. On the substantive, Councillor Free, you've got an amendment.
Yes, look, I've raised this issue before, and it hasn't been addressed, and I'm feeling that the only way to address it now is through a formal amendment. The name Wellington, Hutt Valley, what is it? The name of the whaitua is, I'll write it down somewhere, I want to get it right. Can someone help me out with it? And they refer to it as the Wellington Harbour in Hutt Valley whaitua, and actually I just think that name in itself is quite limiting, and it ignores the fact that part of that catchment, as shown on the map, is actually part that discharges also from our coastal areas. And a lot of our problems actually exist in those streams which discharge into the Cook Strait, and are not covered really in the concept of Wellington Harbour. So we have the Awhero Bay stream, we have the leachate at Houghton Valley, we have the Karori stream, which I think is okay, but we need to make sure it stays. It's not okay. So when we're talking about the Wellington Harbour and Hutt Valley whaitua, I think that really automatically focuses people's minds on that inner harbour, whereas really this whaitua needs to be responsible for the health of our ocean as well and our beaches. And I've made the point before, the name is not reflective of the geography that this whaitua attempts to cover and govern and have guardianship over. So I really, my amendment says that we agree that they actually formally reconsider the name. I'm not saying they should necessarily change it, but I think they should actually think about that. And I don't have a seconder, but I'm hoping that I will have a seconder, and that we will be able to vote on this and perhaps support it, because it seems to me quite a serious submission, and I'd like to raise the whole concept. Yeah.
Thanks, councillors. Someone prepared to second the amendment? Councillor Calvert, you wish to speak? Okay, we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? I declare the amendment carried. We'll now revert to the amended substantive. A bit unclear. We'll now put the recommendations, and I'll call upon a nomination for the whaitua committee. All those in favour of the amended substantive, please say aye. Aye. Against? I declare those recommendations carried. Now I'll call upon nominations for the committee. Councillor Pannett. Councillor Gilbert's been put forward as a nominee. Councillor Foster, thank you. Any other nominations, out of interest's sake? No. All those in favour of appointing Councillor Gilbert, this could be awkward, please say aye. Aye. Against? I declare the recommendations carried. Councillor Gilbert, you'll be a fantastic appointment. I look forward to the work you do. I know you've done extensive work in this area in the past, and you'll represent the city's interests well, so thank you. Congratulations, Councillor Gilbert. We'll now move to report, back to 2.2, the setting of rates for 2017-18. I'm not expecting this will take a huge amount of time, so we'll take this before we break for morning tea. Councillor Foster.
Thank you. Just very, very quickly, this is the outcome, essentially the way we pay for what we've debated a couple of papers ago in terms of the annual plan. There's nothing particularly radical in this. If we're going to do anything substantial in terms of changes to particularly the way we pay for things, that's likely to come through the process as we do the long-term plan, particularly if we want to change the levels of user charges up or down with respect to any particular part of the budget. A few things to say. First of all, the budget, the rates increase that's already been highlighted in a previous discussion sits at the lower end of the spectrum in terms of the rest of the region, and I think that's something we should be pretty comfortable with. There will be people who will say, "Hey, why is it always higher than the rate of inflation?" And the reality is, for most councils, it has been for a long period of time. There are two things to say there. One, of course, is that the things that we purchase as councils are not the same things that we purchase as individuals. So there's a different cost index there, and that's the one that people need to refer to. And that local government cost index is actually higher and has been consistently higher than the consumer price index for some time. The other thing to say is that what I was going to say there. The other thing to say is I wanted to reflect on what Swampy said earlier about bids, and it's nice to see an increasing number of business improvement districts. I particularly want to thank Swampy for the work that he's done in promoting those throughout a number of communities, and I hope that there will be more of those to come, because they are about individual business communities doing the things, being given the ability for us. We collect the money on their behalf, we give it back to them, so it's not our money, we just pass it, we're just the collection mechanism. We pass it back to them, and then they can work out what it is that they are going to do to try and make those business communities stronger. I think those really are the only things that I wanted to... Oh, no, the other bit, sorry, I did want to say about the rates increases, is that people seem to be, as usual, they're very comfortable with saying, look, the rates are too high. What would you like not to have? And they're not so good at doing that. So that's one of the challenges. People really want the rates to be a little bit lower. They're going to have to start telling us what are the things that we provide that they don't want to do, and there's a noticeable level of silence around that most of the time. So happy to move this, Mr Mayor, and seconder.
Councillor Marsh, every second. Wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Calvert-Freeman.
Thank you, Your Worship. About 9 or 10 months ago, when I was thinking about whether I should stand for council and what I might bring personally to the role, and then drafting my own statements as part of the hustings, I said I would only support a rates increase of the level of inflation unless I could be personally convinced that every new project and every new initiative was thoroughly worthwhile. I have been so convinced with those projects that we have added. So I'm entirely comfortable with the rates increase that we are proposing, modest as it may be. Look, councillors, a city's vision lies not only in the noble aspirations set out in its annual plan and its triennium plan, but also lies in its commitment to raise the necessary funds to convert that vision into reality. So kudos to those who have come up with the vision, the visionaries, the ideas people, but my thanks and deep respect to those who run the numbers and establish the mechanisms to allow us to bring those visions into reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert-Freeman. Councillor Foster, right to reply? Great. We'll move the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? I declare the recommendations carried. It's 10:30. We'll break for 15 minutes for morning tea. Right, councillors, members of the public, officers, we'll get on now with report 3.1. So, Councillor Gilbert, I'm going to ask you to introduce the first component of the report, the new lease under Wellington Town Belt Act. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is to renew a lease at Kelvin Park for the cricket club and for the football club. It's a continuation of the lease. It's used all year round. It's good use of the property, and it was adopted by the City Strategy Committee, and I support the recommendation.
And we have a seconder, Councillor Day. Anyone wish to speak? I'll move the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? I declare the recommendations carried. Councillor Eagle to introduce the Wellington Housing Accord, nomination of special housing areas.
Oh, look, thanks, Your Worship. I'm just going to move it and then ask that J be taken separately. That's what I've been requested to do.
Okay. Seconder? Councillor Calvert. Councillor Calvert, you happy to second? Okay, do you also want to second the paper?
Yep, that's okay. So we'll take I and J. Councillor Free, are you...
Councillor Free, we're just waiting on a seconder first, so we'll come to you shortly. Councillor Calvert wish to second, you wish to speak. Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. I know this was discussed at the City Strategy Committee meeting last week, and I did have concerns about approving the new special housing areas, primarily because I believe that we haven't actually analysed the performance of the current social housing areas. We don't know whether it makes a difference. We don't know whether it makes a difference for the benefit of the city and the local communities, and there are some concerns that have been expressed. So I think we're not stopping development. It can still happen under our district plan and the resource consents. We're just saying that we want them to comply like everybody else has to comply. So for me, I and J, they were the new ones wanting to be added. The other ones are just existing where we're rolling over. So they're already in place, so I don't want to disrupt that. But I think for I and J is we should not be approving new ones until we're actually certain that special housing areas are actually delivering what we want them to deliver. Thank you.
Councillor Dawson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to, as I did at the City Strategy Committee, just renew my concerns that the SHAR process isn't delivering what it was originally intended to deliver, which is housing to meet the affordable sector. We heard over the weekend that the Hobsonville development in Auckland have now redefined affordability as $600,000. I'm not sure who that's affordable for, but it certainly ain't me. We have agreed as a council that we want to revisit the housing accord and make affordability one of the platforms in that. I think while we're doing that process, we need to be very cautious about approving new SHARs. And I also think that as a council, we have learnt in the past that we bypass the voice of the community at our peril, and we should only do it if we absolutely think we need to, and I'm not entirely sure we do.
Councillor Eagles going to exercise the right to speak. Let's move on.
Your Worship, councillors, just to make sure that people understand that when we signed the housing accord, which is attached to the special housing area legislation, there wasn't affordability targets put into that accord at the time. Now we know in Auckland there are, and what we said is that we would like to do that. So just be mindful of that. So the success here is really around availability/supply. Thank you, Worship.
I'm going to speak briefly to it as well. I will be supporting the SHAs. I do note the comments of Councillor Dawson. I support his intent as well and is happy to support his amendment. I personally feel, and perhaps this is a shot across the bow as well, that we won't be supporting any more SHAs in the city in the future unless there is an affordability component or unless there are measures that will be benefiting all of those across the housing spectrum. This shouldn't be just a shortcut, a means to an end for the developer who's seeking to get something through without going through due diligence and a process with community input. It's about what's in the best interest of the city. I feel, though, at this point, getting these SHAs up and running, more importantly, getting units consented, dwellings consented on the properties is essentially important. How do I know that it has been effective? Well, because we saw the stats yesterday, that traditional average of housing consents through the council of about 700 to 800, sometimes lower, and we've seen a massive spike. And also we're seeing it here around this table. Shelley Bay, Erskine College, projects that wouldn't have been at the table, they wouldn't have proceeded at the pace that they did had they not become SHAs. So what we need to do in the short term, I believe, is create a glut of housing. We want to add more supply into the market so that we will create some level of competition, so we're not going to see everybody that's turning up to buy a house, and in particular those younger folk, those seeking to buy their first home, are being turned away at the door because they simply can't afford it. And some of us have seen it around this table as well. I know Councillor Young's son has been recently entering into the housing market for the first time. And it's not that easy to do, and it's certainly not going to get any easier if we don't act. So I'm confident that this is in the city's best interest, but I do applaud Councillor Dawson, and I agree with the sentiment that I certainly won't be supporting any more unless there's that affordability component added and that we know that's going to benefit the city even more. Councillor Free and Councillor Young.
I was just going to ask that they all be taken separately, thank you.
Councillor Young.
Thank you. I'm absolutely clear Wellington does need housing. As you say, I've got some personal experience of the shortage of supply, and I have in the past supported these special housing areas. But since this was passed at the City Strategy Committee, the local concerns have grown, and I'm very aware that as one of the local councillors, I was elected to represent people in Thorndon. So this growing resident disquiet is largely over the they don't know what it's going to look like, and there, as I've mentioned before, we have the spectre of the Mary Potter Hospice hanging over this project, and of course it shares the same architect at this stage. So I am concerned about the aesthetics, and I'm also very concerned about the parking, because as a local councillor, and one who's possibly seen to be more car-friendly than some of the other local councillors, I am constantly being questioned about parking and traffic issues in Thorndon. So I know the local residents association aren't opposed. This is not a motion, by the way, this is just a choke. I save the emotion for Gone with the Wind. The local residents association are not opposed to the idea in principle. They would just like to have the idea further developed with a better idea of what it's going to look like. So they've said they'd be perfectly happy for it to come back to council again. And if I'm still alive, I'm happy to speak on their behalf. So I will be voting against the George Street development.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, look, thank you. I agree with all the comments which you made about the need for supply, and I actually do think, I agree with you, Mr Mayor, that I think that the HASHA process has been beneficial in the sense that it's certainly allowed for more development of, or more creation of sections. I don't know whether it's created more houses, but it's certainly created more sections. But that's because not just because we've put the HASHA in place in the SHA, I'm thinking of the northern suburbs, it's because we've also backed that up with a number of different things, particularly our own rating, so that we don't rate people, rate the developers on every section. We give them a stay of execution, if you like. I'm not quite as clear whether it's providing the housing that we particularly want, and whether that's the affordable housing. I'm particularly thinking of younger people who are wanting to start out, which will certainly be in the affordable area, and older people, because we don't have a heck of a lot of particularly stand-alone housing, which is low maintenance, which is available for older people. And I don't think that for example, our Greenfields development in the northern suburbs isn't really providing a lot of that. It's the conventional 3 or 4 bedroom type housing. I just wanted to reflect on HASHA. I understand where the government was coming from, the need to be seen to be doing something, but I don't like the process that they've, either the process in terms of the way it operates, but also the process which allows the Minister to interfere in local government's management of its urban planning. I think the biggest issue for me is about engagement, and it is, as you said, Brian, it's about bypassing the community. And people have two opportunities. If you live in an area, and something wants to be changed in that area, you'd like to think you have the ability to participate in that. There's two ways people can do that. The first of those is when we change the planning rules. So we go through an extensive process when we do that. You have submissions and cross-submissions and hearings and potential for appeals. And then when it comes to the consent process, most of the time, if something is close to those rules, they don't get notified. I mean, last year we notified 0.8% of all consents which were applied for, 0.8. Some of those were full notified, not many, and some were limited notified, i.e. the immediate neighbours. But if we've gone through the process of setting up consultation, setting up the planning rules, and then we go and step over those planning rules and say, here's a hasher, and it essentially dumbs down, it puts the planning rules underneath the requirement to provide housing, and you look at some of the wording which comes through some of the consent decisions, it actually says that the Resource Management Act, it says the district plan, which we've gone through all this process to create, is so subsidiary to, it's almost discarded. Not quite, but it's almost looks like that, discarding some of the language. I know that's not the intent, but it looks like that with some of the languages there, and it must be in the back of people's minds. So that gives me a lot of concern. And when we started this process, and Iona and I were the two councillors at the time who said that we didn't want to enter into a housing accord, but I have voted for a number of the SHAs themselves. Officers said, well, look, we will consult on future SHAs. But the reality is the only people we've consulted with on future SHAs have been the landowners. We haven't consulted with the communities that have been affected. And I think that's wrong. I think it's a poor process in that way as well. So the only ones which I feel that I am comfortable to support are those where we have done that engagement. We've done extensive engagement. And it really is around Adelaide Road, we did a lot. Stebbings, Lincolnshire, Johnsonville, went through a long process to get there. The central area, I'm comfortable with Arlington. Reedy, because it's already a large part of it been consented anyway. It's the last two which are new, which I have difficulty with, and there are two specifics about that. Thorndon, the parking one, look, if they've got to assess that regardless. If it has impacts, it has impacts, and that hopefully will be taken account of in the consenting process, whether it's under HASHA or whether it's under the RMA. It's the character one that concerns me. I don't know what it's going to look like. If I could see it and it looks, it fits in really well with the character of Thorndon, because the character of Thorndon is pretty special. We have some really, really special parts of our city which are important to them. And if you do a development, it's going to be there for 100 years, probably. And so that character is fundamental. And that the discussion we were having yesterday about the capacity of the city to accommodate growth, it's if you say, yeah, we can accommodate more and more growth, but we're going to start destroying the things that we value as a city, that becomes a challenge. So I have great difficulty with that. And if I could just finish off, Mr Mayor, Shelley Bay, you mentioned, it has been around this table. We've had a conversation about that because we're a landowner. That's the only reason we've had a conversation about it. Erskine has not been around this table, and I have to say that was one of the decisions I really strongly disagree with, and that disagreement gets stronger with every day that passes. Because when you put in, there's a whole lot of other values that are there. They are about Category 1 heritage buildings. I don't think we should ever have put that as an SHA, because it meant that even Heritage New Zealand didn't get a say on that first time round.
Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, we all know Wellington's grown, and we all know the number one issue in Wellington, and it's housing. So people need houses. There are families without houses currently. What the SHA do in all its imperfections, and we've already addressed the affordability issue with that, is to allow the consenting to occur more quickly. And I do recall the words of Councillor Free that says we cannot pay lip service to housing in an earlier debate. Now, 5 of these 10 areas listed are in the northern ward of Wellington. It's really important that other suburbs play their part too. Don't cry heritage, do your bit. Don't dump it all in the northern ward. In fact, this development in George Street will improve the area. It's an ugly building currently. It will be dismantled. It will be a lot more attractive. It will be architecturally designed. It will be within the existing envelope and probably smaller. And I do recall other issues, other debates on parking where we've been quite prepared to call inner city developments to have less parking. The other thing I like about this development is it's catering for the 1 bedroom, so that will bring inherently an affordability issue to the fore with single person families, 2 bedroom places, 3 bedroom places. 31 homes that may well not be built at all if this SHA is not approved. That's 31 families out in the cold, and it is cold. As far as White Pine Avenue is concerned, this is not a new one, it's a renewed one. I have reservations about the bush there. but it makes no difference whether it's an SHA or not. The bush is vulnerable, SHA or not. We need to make sure that bush doesn't disappear, but it's not a new one. It was approved before and it was purely a renewal. I was supporting all of these SHA areas. Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Initially, I was actually quite supportive of these SHAs, but I think it was probably based on optimism bias, thinking that it would actually achieve the purpose and intent. But if you look at the HASHA Act, its real purpose and intent, I think it's been lost. I mean, the real purpose is to bring about some affordability in housing. And I think we as a council, we dropped the ball by not actually having any mechanisms linked to these SHAs to actually bring about that sole purpose. And I believe that this is actually being used as a mechanism by developers to actually bypass process and bypass engagement. And what really hit home to me was, and I know we've probably missed the boat on this one, is Lower Stebbings and Lincolnshire. These are two large greenfields developments, and having been on the Whai Tour process, I think we've really missed the boat in terms of good urban design there and environmental management. So I believe that the purpose and intent of the HASHA Act has been lost, and it's been used as a convenient mechanism to actually bypass process.
Councillor Eagle, right of reply? Oh, good. Councillors, I'm going to take the first 10, I think it is, up to H as one block, and then I'll take the two subsequently independently. If you wish to vote against them, you can vote against them, but I'm going to take them as one block rather than having divisions for every single one. I'll check with the standing orders, councillors, but if you really want to go through a division for every single one, which have been considered, and this is confirmation at the committee. Councillor Free, which ones would you like to vote against? And we'll take those separately. Okay, in which case we'll take those four separately rather than doing all of it, and it's good practice. Right, we'll take A, D, E, F, G and H. All those in favour please say aye. Aye. Against? No. Vote recorded. Councillor Panic, Councillor Dawson. Okay, and I'll take B separately, Lower Stebbings. All those in favour please say aye. Aye. Against? We'll take a division. Please raise your hand. All those in favour? Myself, Councillor Kelly Freeman, Gilbert, Wolfe, Calvert, Foster, Eagle, Marsh, Young. That's it. And those against, Councillors Free, Pannett, Dawson, Sparrow, Day and Lee. That's carried. Lincolnshire Farm, Lincolnshire Woodridge. All those in favour please say aye. Aye. Against? No. I'll have a division. All those in favour, arms raised please. Myself, Councillors Kelly Freeman, Gilbert, Wolfe, Calvert, Lincolnshire Farm, Foster, Eagle, Marsh, Young. And against? Councillors Free, Pannett, Dawson, Sparrow, Day, Lee. Aye. That's carried. Woodridge, 30 White Pine Avenue. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Aye. Please raise your hands. So what? White Pine. Myself, Councillors Calvert Freeman, Gilbert, Wolfe, Calvert, Foster, Eagle, Marsh, Young. And against? Free, Pannett, Dawson, Sparrow, Day and Lee. And 30 George Street, Thorndon. That's carried. J, all those in favour, please raise your hands. It's myself, Councillors Calvert Freeman, Gilbert, Wolfe, Eagle. No, Eagle? No. Marsh and Day. And against? Councillors Free, Calvert, Foster, Pannett, Dawson, Eagle, Young, Sparrow and Lee. And that fails. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to report 3.2, the Town Hall Strengthening and Music Hub proposal. I'm happy to introduce the report. Spoke at considerably just last week. Very supportive of the project. Happy for it to get underway. The seconder, Councillor Eagle, wish to second. Anyone wish to speak to the Town Hall project? No need for right to reply. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Declare that carried. It's not bad for an $89 million project. Parking fee increase, Councillor Calvert Freeman.
Your Worship, this is a moderate increase proposed for part of the Central City parking. It's been debated by our City Strategy Committee. When I say it's modest increase, I'm taking that over the 13 years since the last increase. I believe it's worth supporting, and I will be supporting it again now. Thank you.
And seconder, Councillor Foster. Wish to speak? Anyone else wish to speak? No need for right to reply. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? I declare the recommendations carried. I'm now going to move into public excluded. Could I please ask members of the public to depart? Seconder for public exclusion recommendation, Councillor Foster. We're moving to public excluded for reasons pursuant to the Lagoima Act 1987, as specified under 4.1, and in particular Section 7.2i and Section 48.1a. All those in favour of moving to public exclusion, please say aye. Aye. Against? I declare that recommendation carried. Thanks, Colette.